going here. We've got a good chunk of people who will be joining as we get started here. Welcome to this afternoon's presentation with the NCLUG NCDOT OpenX Update Week. NCLUG is proud to partner with NCDOT to put these on, so we really appreciate all the different presenters from NCDOT to share these updates and information for everyone. This afternoon's session is going to be on construction. Brian Edwards will be leading this from the NCDOT construction unit. Just a few housekeeping things. Make sure you're muted during the presentation. If you have any questions during the presentation, feel free to throw those in the Q&A. And Brian's welcome to ask for comments in the middle of this presentation, however he'd like to do that.
It does.
Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, I mean, you can ask us as we go if that's appropriate or wait at the end. Doesn't matter to me. I think that we'll have plenty of time at the end.
Great. Yeah. So yeah, we'll definitely have some Q&A time at the end of the session to go through those. We're recording this, so it is going to be posted on the NCLUG website after the meeting. There's a little bit of editing and stuff, so give it a little time to be up on the site. If you have registered for this event, we'll be posting a link in the chat towards the end of the presentation that will have your PDH credit and questionnaire. So please fill that out to be able to be counted as here for this event. It is a lot event, so we will not be offering PDH credits for someone that watches the meeting after the presentation. So with that, I'll hand it over to Brian. Thank you for presenting today.
Thank you. Again, my name is Brian Edwards, and just want to say welcome to all the NCLUG folks out there. And so I'm relatively new with the construction unit. I've been here a little over 2 years, and my role is the electronic construction engineer. And I suspect many of you know me from my previous role in CAD, and so, you know, being new to the construction, I definitely I still feel like I have a lot to learn about construction. And so, but you know, obviously, as we're talking about ORD and how that's going to impact construction, there's definitely a lot. I guess there's a lot of potential. I'll get my slides to advance here. There's a lot of potential. To be honest with you, I feel like there's you know, probably more questions than answers at this point in the game. And I'm just thinking back to, you know, I felt like, you know, again, my time with CAD and even up till now, you know, we've been talking about ORD and wrestling with it for years on the design side. And you know, I don't know if it's going to be all that long on construction, but it's definitely going to be it's going to be a long process. And I don't think we know all the answers, or I know we don't know all the answers yet. And I think it's just going to take time for a lot of these answers to, I guess, present themselves more clearly as we move forward. But anyway, that's just a bit of a disclaimer there as before I jump in here. We'll talk a little bit about what we do today, or at least how we deal with a 3D model today, just very briefly, and you know, how do we anticipate ORD changing this, and what tools that we anticipate using. Obviously, our field folks are not going to have CAD machines and be able to run OpenRoads Designer, and so they're not. So what are they going to use? Well, they all have iPads. So is there going to be an app for them to use? And so we'll talk a little bit about that. With ORD, delivering a model, a 3D model, how are we going to document build changes? How are we going to document our as-builts in that 3D model? Is a big question there. And then so that'll lead us to talking a little bit about an as-built versus a digital as-built. Just want to kind of clarify that, because I think that term digital as-built is going to be something that's used more and more as we move forward into this new world. And then finally, we'll just kind of I'll just kind of paint the picture of where we think things are going with features, or excuse me, or I guess ultimately with asset management, trying to push forward the, what gets built, from that, that's represented by this model, this digital as-built. How do we take advantage of that data, from on the asset management side of things? And it's a little bit tricky because, again, our tools that asset management uses are not typically Bentley tools. So there has to be some conversion into the world. They're more of GIS type tools. And so anyway, so that's just represents another challenge there. So real quickly, what we do today, and again, I'm sure most everyone's familiar with this, but we use the MicroStation tools or MicroStation software. We produce a 2D set of plans. We do produce some 3D TIN files, and we can, that kind of represents this grading model. So we are doing that, at least for larger projects anyway. But we don't certify that, and that's just kind of like an extra freebie that kind of goes along that gets passed along to construction. And frankly, because it's not certified, the contractors really don't. Well, I don't want to say they don't do anything with it, but they don't use that specifically. They will build their own model, from the files that are certified, the 2D files, and so. But anyway, so that gets passed over to construction, the 2D sets of plans, and this model, design model. That's really, it's just 10 files, proposed 10 files. Again, what's in construction, it's just PDF files that at least our folks are dealing with. And then, we will mark up those PDFs at some point as the project begins to, get built and wrapped up. We will have a process where we mark up any corrections or revisions or changes to the plan. We'll mark that up in a PDF. Okay, and so typically using Bluebeam or maybe Adobe Pro, and then that's basically it. Now I've got this arrow pointing over to asset management for the as-builts. Basically, it's probably more like asset management reaching back over the other way and looking for the plans, looking for the as-builts. I think that's probably more representative of how it actually works. But anyway, the markups are utilized by asset management, and that's becomes how we get our construction assets basically documented and stored in our system, in our asset management system. So all right, so that's a quick overview there. Again, I mentioned that we do provide these proposed 10 files today. Again, they're not certified. So the contractor is, it's up to them. If they want to use AMG, automated machine guidance, then they have, they're going to build the model themselves from the 2D certified plans, and they are welcome to do that. And so we just have this spec here that just really controls how they can build based upon their model. They basically have to submit this model to us, to construction, and then we basically, vet it or verify it. Next slide. So verifying the model, how do we know? So again, really we have the design, which is mostly 2D, some 3D, and then we have this contractor model, which is 3D. And how do we know that it's right? How do we know that it matches right perfectly or reasonably perfectly with the design intent? That's what we have to determine. So, in the process that we have, this is a process I think that was developed by Location several years back. But basically, what we have to do is we have to start with our design model, and bring that forward into this tool called Trimble Business Center. And Trimble Business Center is just it's a tool that's Trimble tool that just has some good I guess ways to compare surfaces, and so that's really kind of the main thing that we're doing with this. But we're bringing the alignments in, we're bringing the 10 files in over into Trimble Business Center, and ultimately we end up with this model. And again, this is a relatively quick process because really it's all built already. It's just we just have to kind of convert it over into the Trimble format. Okay, so what I guess what's shown here basically would represent the design model, and then what we would do would bring in the contractor model. So now we have both models in the same, I guess, software, and we can compare the different surfaces. So again, this just kind of represents what I just described. We've got two models in here, two surfaces in here, and then Trimble has some really neat tools where we can just kind of evaluate, the surfaces. And so what I'm showing here is like a color shading map that we can compare two surfaces, and it will generate this color shading map, and we can kind of set the parameters for the colors. And anyway, we've got it set up so if anything that's white is a very, very close match, and we would say, hey, it matches perfectly. Anything that's blue or red would be higher or lower. One surface would be higher or lower. And so we just because one surface is higher or lower, we still don't really necessarily know which one's right, or which one's wrong. But this just illustrates the differences. And then when we have then we can begin to investigate and see, okay, why is the contractor model different in this area from the design? Is the design model wrong? And so, again, it just highlights areas where we need to focus on, so that we can have some, assurance that the contractor model is good or not good. I know that's kind of it's a subjective word there, but anyway, this process I think has worked pretty good, and we do know that it is not going to be a perfect match. There's just not, and that doesn't mean the contractor model is bad or wrong. Just means that these are areas we need to look at. Can we live with the differences? And that's kind of the approach that we're taking. So anyway, that's what we'll do today. How is ORD going to change this? And this is, again, as we begin to look forward. Looks like I've got something there. So as we talked a little bit about the design model that is today is not really, it's not certified. So I mean, we provide it. But ultimately, with ORD, at some point, we anticipate that model is going to be something that we can stand behind as an organization and say, hey, this is good. We are certifying this as good, and you can build it according to this. And so we anticipate that happening. I mean, again, I think there's a lot of questions as to how that works and how we're going to do that, how we're going to seal the model. I don't know. I don't know how that's going to happen. I know a lot of other, at least I know some other agencies have taken some approaches on this that maybe might work for our state. I don't know. I suspect that the Board of Engineers is going to have to be involved with this conversation as we move forward. So again, let's presuming that the model is certified, and the contractor, builds from that model. I mean, that's at least the hope. I mean, my guess is that'll probably be a long transition period where they're still going to build their own model, and until they begin to have confidence in our model. Okay, and then the questions about how do we how do we inspect based upon a model versus a 2D set of plans. So again, there's still questions that we have. We don't even know exactly. Well, I think we know the tool that we're going to be using. And I'll talk about that in just a second. But let's see what's next here. I guess continuing this conversation or continuing the thought here. I mean, when I say model, what does that mean? Okay, what file format is that? Is it a DGN file? Is it a iModel, which is again a term that if you've been around Bentley over the last couple of years, you probably have heard this term before. Is it an XML file? I know in the past Bentley has had the MicroStation or Geopack has had the ability to generate an XML file of a surface, and that's something that could be delivered, to a way to deliver a surface to someone. So these are still some questions. I mean, my thinking, my understanding is that I think it's going to be an iModel, which an iModel, again, unless it's changed recently, is just a DGN file, but it's kind of a compressed, wrapped up DGN file that has a lot, pretty much all the intelligence of the related, I guess the design intelligence that's kind of wrapped up and stamped in or stamped on into the features that are in the model there. So anyway, that's kind of my thinking, but again, I don't know for sure what the answer there is. And again, I touched on this earlier, but how will the construction field staff interact with this 3D model? Again, we're at some point we I suspect that there are not going to be any 2D plans or plan sheets, right? And so what do our staff use to be able to know where they're at in the field, to be able to check against station and offset and things like that. So okay, let's see, what did I get this slide in here? So I guess again, continuing the thought of how ORD is going to change this. Well, again, as we kind of touched on this, the model is going to be a deliverable. It's going to be really the primary deliverable as opposed to the plan sheets. And that'll make its way over to construction. And again, okay, so what do we do with it in construction? Okay. We'll touch on the tools in just a moment here, but so we do, I wanted to point out, this may not have been the right place for this slide, but we do have several pilot projects. These are small projects that are basically, very close to being let. In fact, this one right here that I'm showing is supposed to be let, next month. And so I've got to pick, some little screen capture here of the model as it stands today. Now, again, this is just a DGN file. Don't know if we can just give this DGN file to a contractor and they can, I guess, use it. I suspect there's some process by which they need to, convert this information into some sort of DTM file that can go into their equipment. But regardless, this is this is a significant, I think, a significant moment for DOT here as we are approaching the having the first project that's designed with ORD getting ready to be let. Okay, yeah. So what tools now will we use or do we anticipate using? So Bentley Synchro is the tool that we think that's going to be, what we're going to use. It's basically designed to be able, there's like 5 different, I guess, modules of Bentley Synchro. We don't really anticipate using any module other than maybe the field module, although it's hard to know. But basically, this should allow us, the inspectors, to open up the model, see where they're at in the field in relation to the, what, where the construction activities are and what's supposed to be built here, and what station, and, they should be able to, touch on a pipe and find out the appropriate, whatever information they need, whether it's the pipe size, the type, or whether it's maybe even the slope or elevations, those types of things. They should be able to have that really all at their fingertips. The thing with this tool, Synchro, is that we don't even have access to it. So we've not had a chance to play with it and to get familiar with it and understand really its capabilities and functions. We've seen demos on it. We've seen, at least I have, and I do think it's made a lot of progress. It's come a long ways from the very first time I saw a demo of it. So, but to me, there's just still a lot of questions that I have without having this tool, that we, I guess, available for us to play with and get our hands dirty with. So anyway, but we anticipate, it's an iPad, or it runs on the iPad, and again, we anticipate this being how we're going to interact, or how our staff are going to interact with a model. I think I just threw another picture here in of that. Okay, so continuing the thought on the Synchro, I mean, the only thing I put in here, the only thing that's different with this slide, and it doesn't really stand out much, but is, how are the field changes documented in the model? Remember in the past we would, do our as-built by marking up a plan sheet. Well, we don't have, assuming we don't have a plan sheet, what do we mark up? How do we illustrate changes like field changes, and document those? And so presumably, it's got to be in this model. And remember, we're not going to have, our folks aren't going to have CAD machines and have, OpenRoads Designer so that they could open it up and shift a pipe 5 feet or 10 feet or whatever. So again, presumably this tool Synchro is the tool that they're going to use, but again, until we see it, it is kind of hard, until we can play with it, it's kind of hard to fully understand how this is going to work. So all right, so this takes me to the as-built, the digital as-built. So if we go back to the slide just a moment, and again, the 3D model there, if we're going to update that 3D model and tweak it, that basically is a digital model, a digital as-built. I've got I copied this definition here from an FHWA presentation on digital as-built, but I liked it. It's a living record updated during construction to support effective life cycle asset and performance management. I think I've got another slide here that also sort of illustrates or represents kind of the difference between an as-built versus a digital as-built. Again, it's the traditional as-built is just a 2D PDF that has some red line type markups on it. The digital as-built would be 3D, and it would also, more than just 3D, it would have all the metadata or the data or the attribution of the features would still be, would be part of it, right? And so and then ultimately, again, as I mentioned earlier, that somehow this information needs to make its way over into the GIS world or to our asset management repository so that they can do their thing with it. So, but anyway, that's a digital as-built, and we are we're still trying to figure out that, like, how that's going to work, what it's going to look like for North Carolina. So this little slide here is just to illustrate that this model does ultimately, again, need to make its way over to asset management. Again, the thing that makes this a little tricky, and I think I touched on it earlier, but there's a different set of software that asset management deals with, and we've done this. We've proven that we can bring DGN files, even OpenRoads designer files over into GIS. We can bring the attributes over there. So it's definitely doable. And that's kind of that's the path that we see moving forward here. This slide here, just kind of continues the thought. We anticipate, I guess, having some preset attributes on the design side of things that will, again, ultimately make its way over to asset management. Maybe a better illustration. Well, I'll touch on this here. We have microstation attributes. Again, they follow that feature with it, and even all the way over to GIS. Then there's civil attributes, which represent the design attributes. For example, if it's you're stationing there, but if you had pipes, there would be a lot more civil attributes there. Again, all that intelligence, we likely want that to move forward, with this feature as it moves forward. But there's another, I guess, area of attribution. This may not necessarily be a new thing, but this is definitely another area of attribution where we envision being able to just add information to certain, at least to certain features that is going to be helpful, particularly for asset management. And so if we can go ahead and get those attributes or those fields kind of pre-set up, so that anytime this particular feature is placed, these fields are already prepped and ready. And then as the intelligence moves along the process into the model and then ultimately over to asset management, it's already, the information really, or most of it is really already there. They don't have to come along after the fact and collect this information. Hopefully it's already, or most of it's already there. At least that's the idea. And maybe just an example of this, at least what we're trying to explore right now, would be just focusing on pipes. And there's actually quite a bit of it. I mean, asset management tracks a lot more information than what's shown here about pipes. But this is just kind of a start to help us work out the kinks and figure out all the ins and outs of this. But what we're trying to do is trying to pre-populate or pre-set up some attributes on pipes, and then as this project makes its way through the construction phase, then maybe the inspector in the field can confirm, okay, this was a concrete pipe, this was the pipe size, this is the pipe length, and all the other pieces of information there, and so now it's documented in the field, and then once this file makes its way over the wall, so to speak, to asset management, the information is already there, and it doesn't have, asset management doesn't have to go back out after it's been constructed to collect and confirm the information. So again, this is again an approach, what we're thinking. So we'll see how it works out, I guess. So I mean, ultimately, well, this is the this is just a kind of a picture of what asset management, kind of their dashboard, and you can run reports. You can kind of narrow down to certain areas and certain counties and look at the pipes that are of a certain size or whatever, and it just gives a lot of a good way to kind of to check the inventory of pipes. And we anticipate ORD and the process, whatever process that we develop, we want it to feed into this and enhance the asset management piece, so that we're, I guess, taking advantage of technology as much as possible. So that's kind of a nutshell of a high level overview of where we're at. I think that's my last slide here. But like I said earlier, I'll go back to this one. But like I said earlier, there's still a lot of questions about how we're going to accomplish this. I still think it's going to be, I don't want to say years, but maybe years before we kind of fully know all the answers to this. But, like I said, I'm excited that we have one project already, at least that I'm aware of there, that's pretty close to being let. That I think the answers will start to show up as we move forward. And that's really all I've got there to share, Randy. And I'll be happy to take any questions if anyone has any.
Brian, are you able to see the chat, or I can read it out to you if you like?
Okay, let me. Well, I should be able to see it. Let me see here.
I'm happy to read it to you.
I'll move this over here. This was the one project that I took a screen capture from. I did want to show that. So it looks kind of neat here. Okay, let me pull up the. All right, so this is I'm looking at a question from Craig here. Or a comment. Remember, even in V8 roadway could generate a proposed DTM. Assume ORD has the same capability. Is it just a matter of deciding on the 3D deliverable for contractors to use for constructing a project, or is there more to the decision? So that's a great question. I don't know. I guess right now, my sense right now is that let's see here. Well, I guess I don't know enough to answer that question just yet. You're right. We definitely had the ability to deliver a DTM, and like I said, I think there was the ability to do an XML file, and I'm sure all that's still there in ORD. I know, and I guess what I don't know is this I model again. If that is something that is able to be harvested, I guess, by a contractor. But again, as we start, since we've got we've got a project that's getting ready to be let, I'll be very curious to see what they do with it, if they even do anything with it. Right now it's just a DGN file, at least that I'm aware of. Maybe they have some more file types there that I'm not aware of. But anyway, sorry, I probably didn't answer your question very well there, Craig, but that's the best I can do at the moment. Let's see here. Comment from Oak, item types may be tied in with construction asset manager in the future. Okay.
Looks like there's some future possibilities there.
I'm sorry, what's that?
I said it looks like there's just some future opportunities there.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's another area, you know, item types versus asset manager and what the capabilities and what's the appropriate use of both of those. It's still, I think, to be determined. Do you know if the NCDOT started to communicate with NC Bells to look at the process for certifying a 3D model for construction or sealing it?
And Brian, this is Jeff Garland chiming in. The short on that is I am coordinating with NC Bells, and we are looking into some of their processes around that. They've done some work around 3D modeling and sealing it, what it would entail. So we're just the beginning conversations of that. But yes, that is starting. NC Bells is aware of it and looking into those logistics.
Okay, great. That's great.
All right.
Yeah, I think. Go ahead.
I was just going to ask for any other questions. Feel free to unmute yourself to ask a question or throw it in the chat. All right. Well, anybody that still has any questions, feel free to reach out to Brian or Jeff or NCLUG. We can definitely get you to the right person to answer a question. Thanks to Brian for presenting this afternoon on construction. A lot of upcoming things on this side of the house. Tomorrow, we're going to start out our first session with roadside environmental. That's going to be at 9 o'clock. So look forward to seeing everybody for that. Again, if you need PDH credits for this presentation, feel free to jump in that chat, and there's a link in there to fill out your name and email and download that PDF credit. We'll also send that out through everyone that registered for the event. We'll send that